believe the crowd might be a little bit thin today, following the Memorial Day weekend. So, but let's give a few minutes for other people to join. Let's give one more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started, everybody. Good morning, everybody. This is Sulabh Ariel, and this is the Pathways to the Future, Transportation 2050, the Long Range Transportation Plan 2050 for the Richmond Regions Advisory Work Group meeting. I believe this is the 5th meeting. Let's go. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, thank you. Let me make it full screen so that it's better. Okay. Okay, the first thing I would ask everybody is to record their attendance. So please write your name and affiliation in the chat box so that we can record your attendance. So while doing that, I also want to ask the group if there's anything which you want to correct in the April 23rd meeting summary. There's a hand raised. Go ahead, Sherry. Sherry, I believe you are muted.
I'm sorry, I didn't have any questions. I'm just having technical difficulty this morning.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I was telling that if anybody has any corrections to the April 23rd meeting summary, we can correct that. It was sent with your agenda packet. Okay, seeing none, the next item in the agenda is the public comment period. I haven't received any written public comment through email or by phone. Sid, at this time, do you have anybody from the public who would like to speak?
At this time, I don't see anyone online.
Okay, thank you, Sid. Seeing none, we close the public comment period. The next item in the agenda is the LRTP progress update. So every time when we start this meeting, I just wanted to give everybody this orientation of the process so that everybody knows what we are doing and is aligned with the work what is being done and the overall progress. So obviously this is a cyclic process. The long range transportation plan, it's an 8-phase process. Phase 1, which is the 2050 baseline data development, and phase 2 scenario analysis that has already been completed and approved by the RRTP policy board. Phase 3, the strategic direction in which we develop the vision, goals, and objectives. That's we will have a discussion and possibly a recommendation from the LRTP advisory work group today. Transportation needs assessment, we are working on that as well. Dorian will provide update on the transportation needs inventory, which we have developed. Once we have done that, we'll be working on the universe of projects, and then trying to prioritize those projects based on the available funds in phase 6. Once that's done and approved, we'll do the evaluation, and then finally we'll ask for adoption. And then this process repeats again, as it is a 3C process: comprehensive, continuous, and cooperative process as defined by federal regulation. Yeah, this is just the simpler version of this process flow so that the public understands it well. Again, this one is a much more detailed process flow in which we are actually working on 2 parallel processes. So we are working on developing the vision, goals, and objectives. At the same time, we are also developing the transportation needs assessment. And today, as highlighted in the graph, we'll be asking the LRTP advisory work group to recommend the goals and objectives. We have been having the discussion for this last 2-3 meetings. And then we are still working on the transportation needs inventory, which would be provided to you after this meeting. Once that's done, we'll change those, actually not change, but actually convert those needs into specific transportation projects. But before doing that, we need to all agree on what types of projects should we include in the long-range transportation plan. So that's the project inclusion guideline, which again, I presented that last time. So based on your recommendation, we would like to have an agreement on that so that we can progress on developing the projects once the needs have been finalized. So that's the overall process today. Any questions on the overall needs, overall process flow before we go into the next item of the agenda? Okay, seeing none, the next item is the phase 3, which is the strategic direction, what matters most for the future. So I'll go through these slides quickly because you have seen these slides a couple of times already. So we looked into the regional strategic plan, transportation vision, and guiding principles. We are not changing that as it was approved by the policy board last time, and much hasn't changed. But it's going to change if when we present that to the policy board, if they have any tweaks, we'll do that at that place. The goals, objectives, and strategies are the purview of this group, and we have been discussing about that. Once we finalize that, we'll also develop the project level performance measures, which is again a lot of discussions. We haven't even started that. The tentative policy board adoption for this process, the vision, goals, and guiding principles, is August of 2025. So we are a couple of months to that phase. So yeah, this is the vision we had last time. I'm not going into that. We have seen this. We have 7 guiding principles, especially safety, more choice, active transportation, transit, equity, freight and people, and then land use integration. And then we, before trying to develop goals, objectives, strategies, and performance measures, we just wanted to have a working definition of what they mean in our plan. And then we came up with 4 goals: safety, sustainability, reliability, and resiliency, the 4 pillars. Just we have some federal planning factors, which was, I think, included in Safety Law, and then it was carried over in FAST Act, and the current legislation also supports it. So we have to make sure that these planning factors are integrated in our overall planning process as well as the goals which we develop. There are also national performance measures goals, which was basically spelled out in MAP 21, but these are still effective. So it basically talks about these 7 things: safety, infrastructure condition, congestion reduction, system reliability, freight movement, and economic vitality, environmental sustainability, and reduce project delivery delays. So these are also things which we want to integrate into our goals and objectives as well. Um, and this is just a crosswalk of how uh, the federal planning factors, the national performance goals, and how our goals line up in this long-range transportation plan. So the updates from the last meeting, I think we had a pretty good session uh, 2 meetings back, in which we had breakout rooms to discuss about different goals. Based on those, we came up with, we tweaked those goals and and strategies and objectives as well, and then we presented to the this body in last meeting. Since then, we still received a few comments, concerns as well, and uh, mostly those concerns or comments have been incorporated in the final staff recommended version of the goals and the objectives. The other things which we have done is basically made the objective statements more clearer. So because mostly it's a quantitative measure in which we are measuring different things. So things like what is the unit, what is the overall period in which we are measuring those things, whether it's daily, it's yearly, those kind of things. Those things have been made clearer. Since then, we have also calculated all base year values, which some of them were missing last time. And then finally, we also developed all target values for all the objectives. So let's go into that. Safety hasn't changed much. I think we all agree on that. The only thing which we added this time was that we wanted a Vision Zero statement. Even though it's aspirational, we wanted to keep that aligning with our localities. Some of our localities already have Vision Zero in their work statements. So the objective now reads that by 2050, the number of people killed or seriously injured on all our roadways will be reduced to 100%. So it's rather than saying 10%, 20%, we just want to say 100%, which is in line with the Vision Zero statement. So it goes with all the objectives, since we are saying Vision Zero. So everything will be reduced by 100%. So that's the target, which aligns with our some of our localities as well. Yeah, the safety strategies didn't change much. You have already seen that. It remains the same. Sustainability, the only thing which was added in the statement was to add a word cleaner transportation, so that it reflects some environmental consideration in our transportation system as well. So the word cleaner was added. So a cleaner transportation system that provides choices and meets the needs of the current generation and provides the same opportunities for the future generation. So for the objectives, we added the actual values. So for the freight moved by intermodal transportation system, we want to increase that by 50%. So now we only have 5% of the total volume of freight moved by rail or through port. We want to increase that to, let's say, 7.5%, which would be a 50% increased from what the base year value is. The second thing was we also added a little bit language on the accessibility measure. So by 2050, the average jobs and weighted destinations per capita accessible within 30 minutes by all modes. So it's basically driving, transit, walking, biking, all at AM peak hour, which is in our case 6:30 to 8:30, will increase by 15%. So We are saying AM peak, our peak period, because that's the most congested period in which people are trying to reach to jobs in the morning. So added that average jobs and weighted destinations basically is we have different destinations and we have different destination categories like pharmacies, grocery stores, medical facilities, government center, those kind of things. And for each destination, we have weighted those destinations. So let's say for the grocery store, a convenience store is given a score of 1. Let's say Walmart is given a score of 5. So it's weighted in its own category. So if it's a big grocery store like Walmart or Kroger, it gets a 5. If it's a smaller one, it's a convenience store. Still have some, we can still buy it, a few things there, and it gets 1. So basically, rather than saying all destinations are equal, we weighted those destinations. That's why we are calling it weighted destination rather than just destinations per capita. So we'll increase by 15%. That's our target. So the base year values, the average, that's throughout our region. Autos is around 2,605, by transit 942, biking 196, and walking 154. So the total of 3,897. Similarly, we have destinations, weighted destinations, or total of 54%. And the target increase is basically autos 2%, transit 30%. Hopefully, we'll have a better transit coverage so that it'll be higher. Biking will develop new trails and bike lanes, and then walking, a new connectivity, those kind of things. So overall target is 15%. The third objective for sustainability is by 2050, the percentage of residents and jobs within 1/2 mile of mile radius of public transit line will increase by 10%. So even though we would increase our overall catchment area for the GRTC transit line, the overall population will be also increasing. So overall population will be increasing, and looking at our baseline growth, most of our growth is happening in suburbs where we don't have much of transit line. So that's why we're saying that we want to, overall the population would be increased. What we have now in 2017 and what we have in 2030 is there's a change. Just the baseline is 34% increase in population. So and then that will increase by 10%. So I think that's a pretty good target. Currently, we have 48% residences and 63% jobs, which is within 1/2 mile radius of public transit lines. The next one is the vehicle miles traveled. So by 2050, the average daily vehicle miles traveled and the average number of vehicle miles traveled per person per year is reduced by 10%. Again, this is the average VMT per person is 31 miles. The average daily VMT is, I think, 33 million something. The daily VMT, that's a difficult target because as I mentioned earlier, we are increasing by 34%. So that technically would increase, but this is again aspirational. But the VMT per capita, that might decrease because of the shorter trips, because of other mode choice which we would have in the future. So we expect that to take place, at least reduced by some percent. Similarly, the next one is by 2050, the transportation related emissions per capita per year are reduced by 75%. So these are only transportation related pipeline emissions, and believe that this is possible because of the penetration of electric vehicles in the region. It's already around 8% now. We expect that number to be around. They have like various sources claiming various penetration rate, but I think it's mostly agreed that it would be around 35-40% by that time. And then the overall the the vehicles and their emissions would reduce based on technological advances and those kind of things. So I believe it would be safe to say that the per capita per year reduction would be 75%. So we have the base year values. We have the NOx, which is 2.41 kgs per year. The volatile organic compounds, 0.91 kgs per year. The carbon dioxide equivalent, which is 4,840 kilograms per year. That's a lot. And then particulate matter 2.5, which is 0.4 kgs per year. And those are the base year values. Most of the strategies remains same. We added a few strategies based on your comments and concerns. So one thing, the couple of things which we have added is that one is to support upward economic mobility by improving workers' access to jobs through reliable multimodal transportation options. That is in line with our accessibility objective as well. Coordinate land use planning with transportation infrastructure capacity and plan investment. So this is a very broad strategy. Again, the land use planning is not within the purview of this plan and nor the purview of the MPO. It's the purview of the local jurisdiction. But again, we can spell that out at the broad level. So that's why it's here. Again, and then the final thing is the prioritized multimodal transportation infrastructure improvements in regional activity centers and local development centers. So we have what we call as the regional activity centers in the Richmond region, which are basically the combination of high growth, both population and employment in the future, which have popped out throughout the region. So the focus would be to have transportation improvement in those areas where there is a concentration of population and employment. And similarly, local development centers are those which have been targeted by our localities, like the I forgot the technical term they use. Yeah, development areas, UDAs. That's what they initially called it. So again, that's also targeting those areas which the localities have targeted, so that there is a nexus of transportation planning as well as land use planning in those areas. Reliability, the definition didn't much change. We only added a few the values to the objectives. So the C1, which says by 2050 the peak hour traffic delays are reduced by 10%. So I calculated the AM peak delays and the PM peak delays. So that's the summation of all the delays for all the vehicles within those 2 hours throughout our region. So it's around like for the AM peak, it's around 7,000, a little bit less than that hours, and then PM peak is a little bit more than 11,000 hours. So our aim is to reduce that delays in the future by at least 10%. It's again aspirational goal, because as you know, as population grows, as VMT increases, the delays increases as well. But again, this is an aspirational goal, and in line with all of our other objectives as well. The next one is by 2050, the percentage of single occupancy vehicle trips is reduced by 10%. So people driving alone rather than using park and ride or kiss and ride, I think those are the things which we would recommend in the future. The base year value is a little bit less than 60%. And we hope that this would change because of the change in mod split, as well as people taking more park and ride and other things as well. So hopefully this is not aspirational, this would change. C3 is by 2050, the average annual daily transit ridership is increased by 75%. So yeah, and I think this is possible because of the overall expansion of the transit network. We hope to see that in the future, as well as the increase in the overall population in the region. So I think this is very much achievable. C4 is by 2050, the miles of dedicated infrastructure for biking and walking will be increased by 25%. So this is only including the what we define as bike infrastructure based on our bike pit plan. So all the trails, the bike lanes, those kind of things. So it's 186 miles now based on our calculation. And hopefully we'll see that increase at least by 25% in 2050. It probably should be more than that, but that's just the conservative approach which we're looking at. C5 is basically by 2050, the bridge and culvert deck area on the national highway system classified as good condition will increase to 10%, and poor condition would be reduced to 0%. So currently we have 6.5% good conditions deck area in our system, in the national highway system within our region. We want to increase that to 10%. And then obviously the poor conditions, which is structurally deficient bridges, which would need rehabilitation or replacement. That surface area is around 4.5%. We want that to be reduced to 0%. Similarly, for pavements, by 2050, the pavements of the national highway system, which are in good condition, will increase to 70%. The baseline value is almost 60%, so I think that's a good target to achieve 70%. We are already higher than the state average, so I think that's a pretty aggressive target to achieve. The strategies basically didn't change. We have already looked at that, so I won't go through it. Resiliency, the definition and the goal basically didn't change, but we added the target values for the objectives. So D1 is basically by 2050, 10% of our at-risk transportation infrastructure in the LRTP network will be improved to withstand extreme weathers, events, and natural disasters. So currently, based on our calculation, based on what the state did for the VTrans plan, we basically borrowed that idea. Almost a little bit less than 450 lane miles, that's around 30% of the network, are at risk of flooding, of sea level rise, those kind of things. And then we are saying that our objective is to increase the decrease the at-risk infrastructure at least by 10%. So the target value would be around less than 394 lane miles in the future. The next one is by 2050, the redundant capacity of the LRTP network in the PM peak period, which is again 4:30 PM to 6:30, will be increased by 5%. So the base year value is a little bit higher than 50%. It's basically the redundant capacity is how much more capacity can we take in those peak periods, and that's around 52%. So we are not, and that's throughout our LRTP network. Some of our roads are already within that capacity in those peak periods, especially if you look at the I-95, I-64 overlap. Some of our sections in Powai Parkway, in Downtown Expressway, those are already full to capacity in the PM peak period. And we took the PM peak period because I think that's where the system is, and looking at the delays previously, it's which we have the most the volumes overall in our region. That's the PM peak period. So I think 5% increasing, it's again aspirational, but again keeping in line with all the objectives we have. We just wanted that to be there as well. And then finally, the network connectivity. So by 2050, the overall average system-wide transportation network connectivity will be increased by 2%. So the average network connectivity, which is all zones in our region, is 1.39. So a value of 1 means that it's a perfect network. And if as the value decreases, the connectivity is becoming a little bit bad. So normally in urban areas, I think if the connectivity is less than 1.4, I think it's considered good. In the rural areas, it might increase, the value might increase more than 2 as well. In some places like you say Manhattan and New York, the network connectivity probably would be around 1.1 or something. But again, for our region, overall region, it's 1.39. Our target is to reduce that by 2% and coming up a value less than 1.36. Again, in lines with all our objectives. This is again going to be difficult, a little bit aspirational, but let's see. So the strategies, we had a lot of strategies, and we basically compressed these strategies to make them 7. Some of them remain the same. Some of them we actually compressed them and added them. So strategy 4 is like basically invest in resilient materials and technologies for infrastructure condition and maintenance. And we added, when existing vulnerable infrastructure is damaged by extreme weather, make the additional investment required to rebuild it to withstand similar events in the future. again, in lines with the system-wide network connectivity and multimodal redundancy, which I talked about, we want to prioritize that there's a swift and reliable emergency responder access during and after the destructive events, basically by enhancing the network connectivity and multimodal redundancy. So that's really important. Again, we added one more strategy, which is basically minimizing the construction of new infrastructure in flood-prone areas and avoid natural resources that help buffer communities from flooding and extreme weather. So that's the overall change. Again, I just wanted to give you what the LRTP road network is, because we mentioned that a few times. It's basically the NHS, which is the national highway system, which is of national importance. It includes interstate, principal arterial, strategic highway networks, network connectors, and then intermodal connectors. And then that plus the Virginia's primary state highways, which is of statewide and regional importance, which connects jurisdiction with each other and with the interstate. Those are basically routes which are route number which is above 600. I think there's a typo there. So the route number should be above 600. I mean, yeah, I think it's right. It's below 600. So nothing higher than 600. So yeah, it starts from 1 to 599. So yeah, I think that's correct. So that's our LRTP network. It looks like this. We have 3,354 lane miles. That's approximately that, including ramps and those kind of things. It might be 5–10% off either way, but that's how we calculate it. And it has a catchment of throughout our region, includes all the important roads across the restrictional roads as well. So with that, I would like to ask the advisory committee if we have any discussion on this. If there is anything which you suggest we don't include, or if you still think there's something which we are still missing, we can have this discussion now. If not, if everybody is fine with this, I would like to have a recommendation so that we can present this to our policy board for their approval. Hi, JJ. Go ahead.
Is the recommendation to, or would it also include the long-range transportation map that you were showing on the screen?
I drove.
Or is it just the goals and objectives that we discussed?
It's basically the goals and objectives, but the goals and objectives specifies what the LRTP network is. Obviously, that definition is there. But again, it only specifies the LRTP network. So if needed, there could be tweaks to that network later on, because it only says LRTP network, right? It doesn't say what the network exactly is.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I was just thinking if we haven't seen a map, I think, to date, aside from right now, unless I missed that. So I didn't know if the group would want time to review it.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, Trip.
I had actually a follow-up question on the map and then one other thing. You said, I think it showed a total of about 3,300 miles in the system by 2050.
No, this is the baseline values that might increase in the future. Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again.
This is the existing network. So that network is this is just for the baseline. But if we added new roads, or we added capacity to any of our roads, because this is lane miles, not just center line miles. So this would change. This will definitely change in the future.
So then I would clarify 2050 network lane miles. On first glance, looks like that's what would be in 2050.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. That's a typo. It should have been. I think that basically meant that this is the 2050 long range transportation plan, and it's the
Understand.
yeah,
But
it's
I think
Yeah.
now I see that, but it
Yeah.
looks to me on first glance like you're
Yeah.
saying this is what it will be in 2050.
right, yeah.
So I think that needs to be clarified that this is current.
Yeah, this is current. Yeah, there's it's disorienting. Yeah, so I should have just said 22 network lane miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my follow-up on the map. My other question is, and maybe you answered this, under the VMT reduction, you mentioned the total number of current vehicle miles traveled. If that goal is met, what would be the amount given the projected population growth of total daily VMT? That's under, I guess, B4.
Yeah, so the target is target reduction is 10%.
Right, per capita, but the total you have there is 33 million average daily VMT. What would that number be if we met the 10% reduction given projected population growth? Is it more, less, about the same?
The objective as it reads is basically saying 10% reduction for both the daily VMT and the average daily VMT. So a 10% reduction in 33 million would be obviously less, around 3 million less than that. Again, it's aspirational, but we are not specifying anything separate for both. It's basically both the VMT per capita as well as total VMT is going to be reduced by 10%. That's our objective.
Okay. Got it.
But again, it's aspirational, as we all know.
Understand.
Yeah.
What one other final thing then, I guess, is if VMT is going down by this amount, and then the very next one we have per capita emissions reduction, do we need a objective in terms of increased adoption of zero emission vehicles?
It might be. It might already been spelled out here somewhere. Yeah, support the adoption of electric and other alternative vehicle fuels and deployment of needed. So it's already there.
But there's no objective. There's no number. I mean, I get it's a strategy.
Yeah.
But it's not an objective. It seems that's the other missing piece of the equation. How you get to B5 is you reduce vehicle miles traveled and you need cleaner vehicles for the miles we still drive.
Yeah. So again, that was, I think, that came as a suggestion, and we didn't keep it as an objective because the actual deployment is outside the purview of the plan, right? So there's a lot of external factors for that to happen.
True.
So that's why we didn't keep it and just keep it as a strategy rather than an objective, because the plan won't change any of that. We are basically talking about transportation projects, and it's not going to change that. That was the main reason it's not there as an objective.
Okay.
But again, the emissions, because it's going to be a cleaner fuel, it's going to be the vehicles are going to advance. Even though the VMT is increasing, the emissions also relate with the speed of the vehicle. So if we have less congestion and more VMT, technically, then still we might see emission reduction. And then again, the VMT by the electric vehicles, which in case might be 35–40%, that's zero emissions. So naturally that would reduce that. So that's why the target of 75%. And I think this is not aspirational. This should be achieved. Any further discussion? Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
So I didn't seem to notice, like I appreciated in some of the strategies, information or kind of verbiage around infrastructure that is that will prepare us for natural disasters or extreme weather, and flooding is definitely mentioned. And I didn't see, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see like extreme heat noted as a specific example of extreme weather. And of course, like from our perspective, we've done a lot of our own studies about the impacts of extreme heat, of course, on transit riders in the region. So I was just wondering if, yeah, thank you for pulling that slide up. Like flood prone areas. Awesome. But like I think it would be amazing to have some language in here in one of the strategies or maybe its own strategy to really encourage the region and localities to, when we're creating new infrastructure, especially transit infrastructure like shelters and benches, that we're using, colors for our benches, for our shelters that are heat reflective and not heat absorbent. So less darker colors, a little bit lighter, just things like that. Maybe something succinct like that could just point to how that would really help. We found that shelters, the presence of a shelter can lower the temperature for someone waiting at a bus stop by up to 10 degrees, which is really huge when you're getting to those crucial high temps of like 90, 100, 108, things like that. So I just wanted to drop that in real quick.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think we could add that in one of the already existing strategies. How about adding it with extreme weather, making sure that we also address any of the extreme heat related infrastructure as well. So we'll just add that somewhere there, concising what you just said. Would that work?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And then I see this, and yeah, invest in resilient materials for infrastructure construction. So that's awesome. That's kind of what I was pointing to with the with the different colored materials. So yeah, perfect.
Yeah, we'll add that extreme heat there as well. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I take this as a recommendation from the group, except for the LRTP network, which we'll discuss further. I'll provide you a map and the roadway network, and then we can go from there. But the verbiage won't change. It's still going to be the LRTP network. What is inside the LRTP network might change based on our discussion. Okay, thank you all. The next step is basically, we have developed, quantified a lot of these things, and we have used some of the calculation were done for the first time. So we just wanted to finalize the methodology to calculate the objectives one more time and do refinement as needed, so that we have a stronger hold of the calculation and the documentation of what we have done. So some of the numbers might change based on our refinement in our methodology. But other than that, I think with the overall verbiage, adding the heat, except for adding that heat language, extreme heat language, the target and everything would remain the same. And then we'll have a 15-day formal comment period for this, for the goals and objectives. That would be somewhere around maybe, I would think, June, July timeframe before the August approval meeting by the policy board. And anything we get it from the public. I think if it calls for any refinement, we'll work on that as well. Incorporate public comments in our goals and objectives. And then based on those refinements, would ask for the policy board to approve this goals and objectives. The other thing is that this is the The text, as you see, is basically dry text. So for the public involvement, we'll make them a little bit more readable and digestible by the public using some graphics, those kind of things. So it's more readable by them rather than just providing a Word document, which might not turn their attention. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this. I think we are good. So thank you all. The next thing in the agenda is the transportation needs assessment, and Dorian would be talking about the existing multimodal transportation issues and needs inventory. I'll stop sharing my screen so that he can share his screen.
All right, good morning. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
Awesome.
if you could hit display settings at the top left and then swap presenter.
Awesome. All right, good morning, everyone. I will be providing a breakdown of our process regarding the LRTP multimodal transportation issues needs inventory. This is the crux of our task for existing conditions analysis, where we identify regional multimodal transportation deficiencies. So this is an example of gap analysis where we seek to find the discrepancies between the current state of the transportation system and the desired safe and interconnected transportation system that we want. Within this framework, we seek to pinpoint where the existing transportation system falls short in meeting user needs, policy goals, regulatory standards, and maintenance standards as well, and provide direction for addressing these deficiencies. So we seek to answer a number of questions with this process. As we look at all facets of our regional transportation system, what areas of the transportation system are we trying to improve? Of course, that includes roadway capacity, bike and pedestrian infrastructure, transit access, freight logistics, and maintenance issues as well. So we seek to also answer what are the shared goals across all sectors of transportation. We align these goals to ensure the creation and maintenance of an integrated, efficient, and sustainable system. For instance, transportation equity and access coincides with the availability of viable transportation options. Safe and interconnected active transportation options coincide with congestion relief in the form of transportation alternatives. Roadway congestion relief coincides with the efficient and timely transit service and movement of goods and services throughout the region. So in this context, we frame these shared goals as issues within the inventory and is defined by overarching deficiencies facing the current transportation system, including unsafe travel conditions, lack of accessibility, lack of multimodal transportation options and connectivity, congestion, and lack of transportation equity. So what are the types of gaps do these issues pose in the context of multimodal planning? Gaps can exist in any various forms depending on geography, demographics, infrastructure, and policy. As you see, we have a number of gaps here that we want to spell out. Specifically, we have service gaps, where areas and times where transit doesn't run or is infrequent. Access gaps, are there populations or neighborhoods without adequate transportation options? Infrastructure gaps, are there missing sidewalks, bike lanes, safe crossings? Equity gaps, are there disparities in transportation access or investment? We also have safety gaps. So where are the high crash corridors or locations lacking safe design or safe conditions? And then what are the policy gaps? Lack of integration between land use and transportation. That Sulab alluded to before, even though that's not within our purview of land use, we want to make sure that we spell out those issues as well in the context of how we can improve our transportation system as a whole in the region. Within this process, we also seek to understand what are the strategies to close the gaps. And this entails industry best practices, recommended projects, and multimodal solutions throughout various studies, local, state, and federal studies that we look to. This requires a multifaceted approach that addresses infrastructure, accessibility, equity, affordability, and innovation. So we look towards what are the infrastructure improvements, new bike lanes, road repairs, bus rapid transit. This also includes improvement of roadway conditions, improvements of first mile and last mile connection. Also, as we begin to dive deeper into the realm of freight planning and investments, we look to see how can we strategically target passenger and freight rail investments, intermodal facility investments, investments within the Richmond Marine Terminal, and of utmost importance, where can we target investments that mitigate negative community impacts of freight operations as a whole. We look at the operational changes, signal timing, service frequency increases. So we can also look towards route optimization, operational changes such as lane management strategies, such as HOV and hot lanes. And we can also look to multimodal integration and real-time data information. We also seek to look at policy reform. So we also want to spell out zoning, parking, complete streets, but also want to spell out what are the equity and inclusive planning policies that we can look towards that addresses certain issues within the area. And then what are some of the environmentally centered transportation reforms, such as green infrastructure and climate resilience policies that we can look to. And then we also look towards technological solutions, real-time transit tracking, smart signals, and overall intelligent transportation systems that we can look towards as well. So this will be a little bit of a recap of previous updates. The inventory is a combination of our existing conditions analysis, local, regional, and state plans, comments from our public engagement period, and industry knowledge regarding current trends, major challenges, regulatory environments, and emerging technologies. From here, we're able to funnel these sources into a set of overarching issues that affect our regional transportation system, with a more specific and exhaustive list of needs that work to address these overarching issues. From here, we have a structured list of existing and emerging problems within the region, along with areas of the transportation system that require improvements. This inventory helps us to prioritize actions, develop policies, and allocate resources effectively. So next, I want to get into the contents of the spreadsheet. Once we go into the spreadsheet, we'll see different columns such as the issue description. As it states, this is a description of the overarching issue with an emphasis on a specific road segment, corridor, or intersection. So for instance, an issue may come about that reads congestion on Interstate 95, or safety issues at Broad Street and Staples Mill. For transit-related issues, a bus route in specific area of the region will be highlighted to indicate the need for increased accessibility. For active transportation issues, specific corridors are highlighted to indicate bike and pedestrian infrastructure needs adjacent to the highlighted corridor. For maintenance issues, specific bridges, structures, and road segments are highlighted to indicate negative structural conditions. Next, we have the issue category. Issues are put into categories mentioned previously and include safety, accessibility, congestion, infrastructure condition. This goes mainly towards our maintenance issues with bridges, structures, and culverts, and pavement conditions. Predictability. This goes towards travel time reliability, or the consistency and accuracy of travel time estimates. Resiliency. How well can our transportation system bounce back from natural and man-made disasters? And then transportation equity, policy, and multimodal options. Next, we have the issue type, and this basically highlights the mode of transportation with which the issue may occur. And then we have our needs category, and this is where we get into the solutions for specific issues. For instance, roadway issues may have a need category of roadway extension, interchange modification, capacity change such as a widening or a road diet, major intersection improvements, realignment or relocation. Another example, for bike and pedestrian issues, a need may be an on-road or off-road trail construction. A need may be filling in the gaps of an existing multi-jurisdictional network, or a need may be to support the support of first mile and last mile connections. For transit, a need will be proposal of a new regional transit route. Next, we have the location. So internally, this section was used to link the spreadsheet that we have currently to the LRTP road network in an effort to visualize where are the road segments and corridors that we need to focus on in terms of issues and needs. But for the purposes of dissemination to the localities, we use this field to provide a termini of a road segment or corridor. So for instance, in our earlier example, we have an issue of congestion on 95. This is where we'll get into the actual termini of the issue that has been spelled out in a number of studies or plans throughout the area. So congestion may be, so an issue may be congestion on 95, but the location will be between the Bales Road exit and Chippenham Parkway exit. Next, we have the jurisdiction, self-explanatory. We want to spell out whether it's in a specific jurisdiction or multi-jurisdictional. And then we provide the source. This is a general description of where we derive a transportation issue, whether this is from a planned RVA study or data analysis, a VDOT study, a locality study, comprehensive plan, congestion management plan, or public comment. And then we get into the source detail. We get into the specific plan or study for which we derive the transportation issue. We also have a section for proposed projects. Of course, within each study or plan, they may have a proposed project that coincides with the issue, and we want to make sure that we spell that out in terms of transparency of how we got to a specific issue or why a project or an issue is included within the spreadsheet. So what you're seeing here is just a snapshot of this spreadsheet and its contents, a simplified view of what started as a very large and detailed data set. Originally, we had over 47,000 individual entries. That's because each issue or need was directly tied to a specific segment of the road network, resulting in a high volume of granular data points. To make this information more manageable and meaningful, we applied geospatial analysis and data management tools to help us identify patterns, group similar entries, and consolidate the database on common issues and geographic proximity. The result is a more streamlined and digestible table, one that allows for easier navigation, filtering, and review. You can sort through and explore the data by issue type, location, mode, or any other relevant field, making it much more functional for decision making. This version is designed to support productive conversations, whether you're looking at a specific corridor, a mode-specific challenge, or broader regional patterns. And we'll continue to refine it based on your feedback and ensure that it remains a useful tool moving forward. So while this effort began as a data collection exercise, our goals went beyond that. We want to be able to show geospatially where the region's transportation issues and needs are actually occurring. What we have highlighted is the link ID that we have originally in the spreadsheet that helped us link the issues and needs within the spreadsheet to the LRTP network that was mentioned before in Tulav's presentation. So using that data, we developed an interactive map to help visualize key corridors across the region that are experiencing challenges, whether that's congestion, limited access to transit, or safety concerns. This spatial approach brings the issue into a sharper focus, highlighting not only just individual problem areas, but broader patterns and connections throughout the region. More importantly, this visualization is a tool for decision makers to help shift the conversation from isolated fixes to more strategic planning. By identifying where the needs overlap, we can better understand what types of investments will have the greatest impact on creating a more connected transportation network. Ultimately, this is about building a more complete and cohesive transportation network, one that supports all modes of travel and responds to unique challenges to our region. And with your input, we can continue to refine this tool and get a more coordinated infrastructure decision-making process going forward. And as you can note below, because active transportation projects and rail issues cannot be mapped within the LRTP road network, we have separate map entries for these two modes of transportation. So we've been working to geospatially identify where regional transportation issues and needs are occurring. The result being a snapshot of high need corridors across the region showing patterns of congestion, safety issues, limited access, and more. Now what we want to do is ask, what did we miss? Are there corridors or problem areas that aren't showing it up within the data, but you know of are significantly based in your local experience? Related to that, do these identified corridors align with your internal understanding of your locality? We want to make sure that the analysis resonates with what you're seeing on the ground. And as we move forward, we want you to start thinking about what could be the potential projects to address these issues, whether that's new infrastructure, improved transit services, safety enhancements, or anything else. Your ideas are key in shaping the effectiveness of this mapping tool and spreadsheet. And finally, an important lens that we're applying is that, do these potential projects address multiple issues on the corridor, and are they multimodal in nature? We're looking for strategies that not only solve individual problems, but also support integrated, efficient, and equitable transportation solutions. So, of course, this is just the beginning of our collaborative process, and your insights will directly influence the priorities and projects that we move forward with. And we look forward to your feedback going forward. So just as a quick update on our next steps, staff will be reaching out to set up individual meetings with each locality and agency to go over the needs inventory in more detail. These conversations will be a great opportunity to make sure that we're capturing the right information and identifying any gaps. In the meantime, we encourage all LRTP advisory work group members to take a look at the needs inventory and map and share any contents or feedback you might have. And your feedback will be very important going forward for finding the inventory. So after this meeting, we'll be disseminating a refined spreadsheet that you will be able to look over, as well as the geospatial exercise of the interactive map that will show the corridors across the region that have specific needs and issues that we want to address. I want to open up the floor for any questions or any concerns regarding the upcoming spreadsheet and map.
Dorian, there's already a question from Mitch. It's saying, are you planning on reaching out to any community groups for task 4.2? And I think we have Holly's presentation next, which would just give the answer to that question. So we can just wait until we have her presentation.
So we have a question here in the chat. Did you address where this initial list came from? Is it a carry forward from the 2045 plan, less projects completed? We do have a number of projects from the 2045 plan that we do plan on including. The list that we have now comes from a number of studies, plans, comprehensive plans, local and state plans that we are looking to, as well as internal data analysis and data studies as well. So they're coming from a number of studies where we can get these issues and needs from. Any other questions or concerns? Going forward, as we get more into the universe of projects, Sulab will spell out a little bit more in depth about the universe of projects, and Holly will, going forward, will discuss the public engagement input as well.
Thank you, Dorian. Any further questions for Dorian before we have the next presentation about public engagement from Holly? Okay, seeing
Thank
none.
you all.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to stop? Okay, that's good.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Hi, I'm Holly. So, I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on what we heard from this last engagement period that we did, which was mostly from January to early May, but includes some things that happened a little bit late fall of last year. But before we do that, I know we've been staring at a screen for a while, and so webinars are a little limited in what I can do to engage you all, but I would love it if you could raise your hand with the little hand raise feature in Zoom, right? So you can click on the raise hand if you had a hand, haha, in helping us do any of this engagement. So if you gave us a community that you wanted us to talk to, if you downloaded our toolkit and shared it, if you filled out the survey, if you volunteered in an event, if you were at Pi Day or the transportation forum last year, raise that hand up and let us see all this good work that this committee has helped us do. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I love it. Thank you, because you all are ambassadors for this, right? Some of you are on our committees. Some of you have been doing this a really long time. Thank you for helping us spread the word on that. You guys can put your hands down now. So the other thing I wanted to note is that this is just the first step. There will be engagement periods like this throughout, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on kind of the data we've collected since we started doing this. So the engagement period that we're measuring is really the last 4 months. So from January to really the very end of April, the first weekend in May. And so the last time I spoke to you, we talked to you a little bit about our strategy of how we were targeting folks with both in online and in-person engagement. So this first slide is just about our in-person engagement. And so we went to or created or were leads in 50 events in the public in the last 4 months, which is really awesome. I feel really great about that number. And we engaged almost 2,000 people at those 50 events. Now, some of these were small. Some of them were very targeted with smaller groups. Other were large events where there were a lot of people going on, but these are all people that we felt like we engaged in some sort of intense strategic way. So that's pretty cool. Now, some of you have been doing this for a while, know that the last time we did an LRTP was during the pandemic. And so that was before my time. And so it's hard to benchmark to the last time because the pandemic made everything be virtual. And so we have way less in-person data from that last time. But this feels like a good place to be going for even just a 4-month time period of trying to get across the whole region. So what did we do online? Well, so online, we have our social pinpoint website, right? The Engage platform, engage.plannerva. And so in that same time period, we had over 2,300 page views. So that means all the times people might have come back, might have downloaded something, might have gone and filled out a survey, might have gone to that map and pinned something. So that's how many times people are engaging with it. And so I think the views is actually a good number of like, what kind of traffic are we getting? And the unique number of visitors was over 1,000. So that also feels like a really good number. We had 2 input tools on the site. One was the map where you could pin something you liked or something that needed attention. And you could also fill out a survey that was really open-ended, that was still in the visioning phase, right? This was when we were asking people some broad questions and asking people what they wanted to see. So we had over 2,000 contributions to those 2 tools in that same period. Here's a screenshot from Social Pinpoint, our engagement platform, which is just kind of showing you the activity that happened each day throughout the months. So starting a little bit in December when we kind of soft launched the website, but really we talked about it and launched in full starting in the new year. So that's why most of the activity is from January to May. Up at the top, it's kind of giving you some more stats about what the differences mean between views versus visits. The contributions number, that 2,286 is the number I referenced before. These might be slightly different because of when I pulled this image versus when I had the totals, but they're close enough. A note I want to give you about contributors is that is not an accurate number of humans who've interacted because We also input some of the data that we have from our in-person engagements into the platform. And so that number is lower than it might seem, because often if we were at a physical event, we input the data ourselves. So we were only counting ourselves once as a contributor, right? So the contributor number, I think, is not an accurate number in this case. And so you can see some of the peaks, like some of those peak numbers, I think, are around times where we were entering the data and or around when we had big events. So like Pi Day was a high peak because people were utilizing our site around the times when we had big events. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about kind of who we talked to a little bit later, and you'll get to hear some information about what the themes are. But I also wanted to just give you some numeric data here. This is the breakdown of how many people filled out the survey, which is called form. So that's what the survey for. So 404 people filled out the actual form to give us that open-ended question, and then 1,881 plots on that map. And this engagement number at the top right is actually from the National Social Pinpoint team. We had a call with them, and they were actually really impressed that our engagement rate across the other folks that also have this platform was actually really high. Apparently, we were above the standard that they use to benchmark folks who were also using this, and other MPOs, other agencies across the country, that ours was really high. So they were impressed. So that felt good to know. And this is just a breakdown of some of the questions. And so let me move my box out of the way here so I can see it. So one of the open-ended questions we asked was for folks to rank what was important to them. And so this is showing the bottom axis is the rank importance. So there were only 5 numbers. So out of 5 times, if you could bring it to the top the most, safety was the one that was brought to the top as the highest importance more times than the others, followed by interconnectivity. So these two were the most important, but you see there's not a huge difference, honestly. There's nothing that's like, no, I don't, as far as ranking goes, they felt pretty similar. And then at the bottom, I just wrote out the definitions for you because on the left-hand side, you can't actually see that very well. But this was just getting people to start thinking about the trade-offs, right? The challenge I have is whenever we ask people an open-ended question about what's possible, they're not thinking about trade-offs, right? We can't have everything that's possible. So we've got to think about how do we combine these different features to figure out how do we get a system that works. But you'll notice that safety was a theme that was pretty prominent throughout. So there are 3 questions that we had a little slider on the survey that we're asking about safety depending on the mode. So the top is about traveling in general, the middle is about walking or wheeling, and the bottom is about biking. And you'll notice that people generally felt more safe when they were in something that was overall travel. And I think that most people filled out overall travel, thinking probably mostly about cars and vehicles. So you notice that the not safe number went up as people got on their foot and bikes, right? So people felt generally less safe walking or biking. Now, there's not anything like huge here. There's a pretty good bell curve starting to form a little bit. So this is just one rating, but it was another way to get people to start thinking about, okay, of the people who took the survey, how are they feeling? Now, again, this is not thousands of people. This is a couple of hundred, right? So overall, we had about 600 people between online survey takers and then the data that we had in person. So when we were talking to people in person, we tried to capture demographic data as much as we could, and then we entered that in here. So the numbers that we're getting, I would say, were between 400 and 600 people who actually answered these questions. So one of the other questions we asked in that big open-ended survey is what would they like to change about the transportation system? And so here are the themes that we saw. Overall, people are asking for things that were multimodal, that were safer, that were less car dependent. The phrase less car dependent shows up a lot in all the open-ended feedback. And then these are the groupings of themes that we saw. So people wanting attention to infrastructure maintenance, but also to policy, expansion of public transportation, expansion of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, wanting things to feel safe and not trafficky. And then again, that reduced car dependency. This will not be magic to anyone who's done this before, right? These are the kinds of themes that often pull up when you get all the data. And what we're doing is looking at what are the things that people are actually saying detail-wise, and Dorian's list of projects is kind of cross-referencing where are places where people told us about actual corridors and things that we need to know, but then also what's the overall feel of how the public is thinking about transportation. This is a shot of the map that's online, so you can kind of see where the pins ended up. So it's kind of cool to see the colors. Each color is actually related to a different category. So we asked people, hey, is this issue about safety? Is this issue about congestion? Is this about interconnectivity? And so those different symbols mean different things. But this is actually a breakdown of where most of the pins fell. So you can see that most people had energy around the 23113 zip code. So we got a good breakdown of counties. We got Midlothian, we got Henrico, we got Ashland, Chesterfield, the city. Ironically, the city didn't dominate, at least not in one zip code. I think overall, probably the city has a lot because people are thinking about that a lot, but got a good range of kind of total contributions across the map. And then this is the breakdown of what kinds of categories people chose to pin about. So like I said, each of those dots were a different color. This circle grid reads right to left, so safety, then congestion, then interconnectivity, accessibility, so it goes clockwise around. So if you read from the top down, that's the percentage of each of these. So it looks like safety and infrastructure were actually the biggest posts that people pinned about, followed by design. And then there's also an upvote feature, which is if somebody pins something, somebody else could say, yeah, I like that. And so 417 people upvoted other people's pins, which is cool because we haven't actually promoted that feature very much. So it was kind of neat to see that that many people were like, yeah, I want that too. In the social map, there was also a place to put a text answer to tell us a little bit more about what that pin was about. And so here are the themes that came out of that text block. Similar things that we saw before, but some positive highlights. People did like some of the things that existed because remember, we weren't just asking about negatives, but also positives and visioning. So they liked things like the GRTC link, the Fall Line Trail, some notes about some specific infrastructure projects that they liked, an appreciation about, hey, we like the progress we're seeing, but we know there's still a lot of need for more. And then under each of these themes, I just put an example of an actual statement from some of the text that we saw that highlights the theme. So for instance, in maintenance, somebody mentioned, hey, there are issues with flooding on Route 60. Underneath pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, someone literally said, please we have a need for safer pedestrian crossings, marked crosswalks, and then specifically mentioned Ashland and Chesterfield. So this is just pulling in some themes of the actual text we heard. And if you're a nerd and want to look at the actual text anytime, feel free to contact me and be happy to share that with you. There's so much in here and it's really interesting to see what people say. So these are some demographic breakdowns. And let me just move this so I can see it. In the dark green is the percentage of the survey takers. And then in the stripy is the actual like makeup of the age demographics of our region. So it's comparing who we talk to versus who exists in the whole region. Now, again, this is about 400 to 600 people. So this is not everybody, right? It's limited in who we chatted to. So it's kind of showing you what does our reach look like of who we're getting to age-wise. This age breakdown is purposefully broad to the transportation team's request is like in the way that they're looking at transportation, they're really only looking for our folks over a certain age. Like, are we looking at a senior population for need? And then in my purpose, I also wanted to know, hey, are we reaching the future generations? Are we reaching those under 18 very much? So we have a lot of work to do in the reaching under 18, and that's, I think, a known thing. And we're doing okay in reaching the other age demographics. This is the same breakdown with income. So again, the ranges are purposefully broad because for the transportation team's needs, they were looking at who's considered low income. And so that's if your household income is below 55,000, these are the ranges that they recommended we use. And so again, we're not trying to capture everybody. We're just trying to see where are people falling. So again, as a region, the number that is below 55,000 is a lot higher than those who actually filled out the survey. I want to note that sometimes when we were in person talking to folks, weren't capturing their individual demographic, right? So we might have been reaching folks that were in a low income bracket, but we weren't individually asking them to tell us their income on every single interaction we had. And then this is just a map showing you kind of the range of all the responses we got by zip code. And this is, again, if somebody chose to put it in, showing you the higher count is the darker blue. So we got more responses of people who lived, worked, or schooled in and around the city center, which makes sense. Some other stronger pockets up here in Henrico and then out west. So a pretty decent range, right? Like, and then if you look at the next slide, which I'll show you and then I'll come back, is this is actually the breakdown of population in the region by zip code. So you can actually see, oh, where is the population density exist in our region? And are we trying to get close enough to capturing it? So again, this is not perfect. This is our first go with this. We know we are not getting to everybody, but I feel pretty good about the range of space we're getting to when the density matches up. So if I go back to who we talk to, and then where people live. So we're missing some clusters where people live that's dark, that we don't have a dark part on ours. And again, this is just based on what people actually told us. That we know that we went to some of these places in our public engagement, but we might have not gotten an individual human answer that was like, this is my zip code. And then one last breakdown of kind of our racial breakdown of survey takers versus the region. So again, the dark bar is who the percent of survey takers were, and then the stripes are the percent of the region that is this racial demographic. So we're doing okay here. Yeah. This is, I feel like this is, I'm surprised this is as good as a combo as it is, that we're like closer to what the regional breakdown is. And then here it is on a map. So this is our survey respondents minority population. So this is just logging minority populations. And again, we do this because this is a requirement of the transportation funders to say, what's the population of your region and who are you talking to? So we had a denser part closer to the city center. So the darker blue is a higher count of responses. And then the next map is compared to the breakdown of the entire region. So this is the breakdown of the minority population by zip code for the whole region. So how did we do in comparison to where people actually live? So this is where the region is. This is what our responses were. And then this is just a sampling of where we went. This is not every place, but I wanted to kind of remind you of the places we tried to go to and trying to cover serving specific localities. But often when we were at an event or even engaging with a group, we realized that the locality served was actually quite regional. Like we couldn't say this was only a Henrico event or this was only a Chesterfield event, because usually people were coming from all over. Some were specific to the locality, like we went and did the New Kent plan with New Kent, so that one was specific to that locality. But this is giving you an idea of kind of where they were, who we talked to, the kinds of groups we were chatting with, and when. And you can also see the number engaged is all over the place. And then I'm going to show you this next slide, which is a few more, just to kind of give you an idea of the breakdown. Had good turnout at the Teen Summit, which is kind of cool. That's a new thing. We hadn't done that before. And then I'm just going to move on in the interest of time. More text responses to, we also asked folks, what do they want to know about what do they want us to know about getting around the region? And so these are some of the themes that came up from that very broad question. Again, safety, the necessity of cars, the state of the infrastructure and public transport, some specific routes that came up that needed attention, Carytown, the rural areas in general, Powhatan, Hanover, Manchester was mentioned. Some folks were looking big picture, like a vision for different rail usage, which was kind of neat. I feel like I heard individually, like anecdotally, a lot of interest in rail. Some impact on lower income and disabled. Some of the connectivity we had from our rural public transportation analysis last fall really brought attention to how are the disabled and seniors getting around if they don't have cars or they can't drive in the rural areas. And then gender breakdown, more women than men filled out the survey. We have a couple folks who are identifying as non-binary and agender or choosing not to reply. But based on percent of responses, again, this is out of the people who actually filled out the survey. You know, we're counting gender of the humans we talk to in person necessarily. And then language spoken at home was another question we asked. And so the majority of folks English, but we did have 16 people say that Spanish was their primary language, one person who had Arabic, and then 2 others. And those languages were Twi and Pari that were listed there as other that we don't have, because those the ones on the left are actually the top 10 spoken in the region, which is what our social pinpoint platform translates to. So if you go to the top right, you can actually automatically translate our entire engagement site into those 10 languages. So those other 2 were outside of that. And then I think this is the last question, which is how did people hear about us? This is just helpful to hear about where folks are finding us. Most people are finding us because they were coming to an event, but followed closely by social media. And then that good old other, which is just probably a combo of a whole bunch of other things. So, questions, thoughts, concerns. I'm gonna go back to this text heavy slide. And to somebody's question about, are we, chatting with the public about this? Sulab, help me get the timeline correct on the universe of projects. Once we create them, will get shared with the public, but that's not until a little bit later this fall. We are essentially taking this information about, hey, what do you want to see? What are the problems? And working that into what Dorian showed you about what are the known issues and making sure that they align and that we're not missing anything. Is that right, Sulab?
Yeah, we are also so the issue inventory is not just only the issues which came from our data analysis, but also we are going to align with what we heard from the public as well. So basically, if the issue already exists and if you see the same issue from the public, it means that it's there in the ground as well, right? So it's gonna the public comments is gonna reconfirm those issues. So we are going to align those. And once the issues has been finalized, then we'll develop the universe of projects based on those issues. Again, the development of transportation project is a much more technical aspect of the plan, so it's going to be developed by the localities, by VDOT, by us, rather than the public. So once we have the universe of projects, we'll go back to the public. That would be around early next year. I think that's tentative, around December timeframe, which we want to approve the projects, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and that's our next big engagement period, right? So when we launched this, we said to the public, hey, we want to come back to these intentional groups that we met with 3 times. This is the first time. The second time is when we're going to come back with that universe of projects and talk about prioritization and say, hey, let's talk about funding. Let's talk about what are these, if we can't do them all, what do you prefer? And then we're going to come back that 3rd time with the final plan to say, here's where we ended up. Here's how we're using your data. Does this feel right? And so there will be touch points in between, but those are the big kind of engagement periods. Stephanie, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for taking us through that. That was really, really interesting. And I probably will reach out to you for just a deeper dive because I am that nerd you spoke of. My question, maybe you just answered it, but I'm just curious how, like, what's the vision for incorporating specifically public comment feedback into the final draft of the report? How
You mean
might that look?
Like how does the text, how are their words used? And like, how does it show up?
Yeah, exactly. Like, will there be an opportunity for like a couple pages or whatever that just highlights, okay, this was our public engagement strategy, and this is a
Yes.
snapshot of basically what you just took us through a little bit, so that people can see how we did the process and the opportunities for engagement. Yeah, and
Yeah,
all the
100%.
themes that came up.
So initially, it will also go on the social pinpoint site. So we'll have some sort of visual that is a little bit easier to read and infographic heavy that will let folks know from this stage, here's what you said. So that will go there probably in the next month or so. In the final report, and I'm going to need the transportations team's feedback on this, is I think that they listed literally every comment last time. So I think I would like to package it in a pretty way that's a little visual and easy to read. But then I think there is a place in an appendix where it's literally everything everybody has said. Is that right? Sulab is nodding.
Yeah, that's right. So we had a kind of a summary in the main document about the public engagement, and we had a whole technical report. I think it was technical report H, in which we had everything, all emails, whatever, except for the phone calls, which we didn't convert into text. But other than that, by any medium, any comments we received, whether it's by a official letter, by email, by any surveys, or we just actually converted it into a PDF, and then it was in the public engagement document. It was like 500 pages. So we are going to do the same this time as well.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? And I would say that, we are always open to new communities, right? Like we know that we haven't gotten everywhere. We're trying our best to get to a diverse swath and to get to all the counties and feel like we're getting a representative sample. We will probably start up again, I would say maybe late summer, reconnecting with some of these folks to say, hey, here's the next one, it's coming. What can we do? Where can we go? But if there are other groups that you're like, hey, how come I didn't see those people in there? Feel free to reach out directly and I'll pop my contact info in the chat for you.
Thank you, Holly. Any further questions for Holly before we go into the next item? Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah, can everybody see my screen now? Okay, let me make it full screen. Okay, so the next item is the LRTP Phase 5 update. What are the options? It's basically the process for developing of the transportation projects, which we call as the universal projects. So the first thing is to develop the regional project selection guidelines, which we discussed last time. And then obviously after that, develop the whole list of candidate projects. And then obviously we need the funding, the estimates, the budgets for each projects. The tentative timeline, as I mentioned, is around December 2025, in which we will finalize all the universal projects. And then after that is basically starting to prioritize those projects based on our prioritization process, which we'll be developing in the meanwhile. So again, we presented this last time, but just wanted to give you a heads up that any transportation project can be categorized as regional project or local or programmatic project. If it's a regional project based on our definition, if it's not in the CLRP, it's not eligible to receive regional funds. So the LRTP needs to be amended to get that project in. If it's already in the LRTP, then it's fine. If it's a local programmatic project, which is a smaller project, which is not within the definition of the project inclusion guideline for the LRTP, then it's eligible for regional funds. The only catch is that it has to be consistent with the goals of the long range transportation plan. In most cases, it would be. So this is the project inclusion guideline. This is basically the regionally significant projects that should be in the LRTP. And we discussed this last time, and I received based on our discussion last time, I added a few things. All the ones in dark red are the ones which we added based on our discussion. So roadway projects, projects on the roadways on the LRTP road network. Again, the LRTP road network is what we are proposing, but again, it's not been finalized. But the word LRTP road network, it's not going to change. So whether we change the actual network. So the projects are the capacity change project, any adding or removing of lane, changing of uses, changing the lanes to HOV lanes or hot lanes. We don't have that in the region now, Both Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia have them. We might add that in the future. Bus-only lanes, I think some lanes in downtown BRT are bus-only lanes, so those kind of changes. Realignment, extension, relocation, new interchanges, interchange modifications, any overpass, underpass, uh, and then major intersection improvement. I think last time we had that, we said that both the legs of the intersection should be at the LRTP road network. Now, based on your comments and discussion we had last time, we have changed that to at least one leg should be on the LRTP network. And then we also have a dollar value attached with that. So at least the project should be $10 million. So we only want to focus on big regional projects in the LRTP. If it's a smaller project, which is less than $10 million, then it doesn't need to be in the LRTP. It would be considered as a local programmatic project, and it could ask for regional funding without being in the LRTP. So it's just a hiccup that smaller projects. If we add those, all smaller projects, it's just going to be a hiccup to modify the LRTP. So that's why there's that a cost value associated with as well. $10 million is what we came up with. I think we could go higher based on what you all think. We also added some of the spot safety and ITS improvements, which were discussed last time. So again, if it's an intersection level spot improvement, like adding a crosswalk or a sidewalk, again, it's a pretty small project. But if we want to bundle those spot safety at a corridor level on the LRTP highway, then obviously that's something which we can include in the LRTP. Again, the value associated, it's going to be more than $10 million. Again, we also heard about active transportation project and transit infrastructure improvement, which is normally bundled at the corridor level with the roadway project. If that's so, and the value is more than $10 million, then we should include that in the project inclusion guideline for the LRTP. Then we have the projects on new road and alignment, which normally would be in the LRTP road network. So any new road, which is, as Flip said, figured out that the LRTP network, which we are seeing now, is just the existing network. That network would change in the future. But we are not going to add anything. It should have that magnitude to be in the LRTP network. So any road which is currently of that similar roads, which we already have figured out in the LRTP network, those roads would definitely, if there's a new road or alignment, that should be in the LRTP road network, would be considered as a future project. And then one last thing which I added is that some of our highways network which provide access to interstate or freeway interchanges might not be in the network. So if there are big interchange modification or new interchange projects, and that project also needs some modification to the access road, which might not be in the LRTP network, those roads are qualified as a bundle project for those interstate interchange improvement project. So just wanted to add those things. Bridge projects haven't changed much. I think we didn't have much discussion, but it's basically replacement or major rehabilitation of the bridges in the national bridge inventory and the structures in the LRTP network with a poor or cusp bridge condition rating. So it has to be structurally deficient, which is poor, and then it could be cusp, which is a general condition rating of 5, which in time would be structurally deficient. So we are looking at 2050, so there's a lot of time, and the cusp bridges are the ones which ultimately would turn into structurally deficient, so that's why we are adding that. Transit project, again, nothing changed from what we had last time. Fixed route projects, new BRT projects, expansion of existing BRT corridors, again, light road rail corridors. I know we had a study long time back, but since then we don't have any momentum on light rail. But again, 2050 is like 25 years from now, so I think we could think about that as well. Major transit system improvements, so transit hubs, centers, transfer stations. If we are constructing those, if we are relocating those, and then any significant upgrade to existing transportation infrastructure. Again, we have a dollar value associated with it. And then large-scale fleet expansion, again, $10 million or more. It's mainly for new corridors rather than existing fleet changes, that would mainly be considered as maintenance. So if it's a new, let's say we are extending certain routes that would need new fleet, that needs to be expanded, that would qualify. Again, the dollar value of $10 million or more. If it's less than that, it's again local programmatic project, doesn't need to be in the LRTP, but it's still eligible for funds. And then we have transportation demand management, TDM projects. Any park and ride lots, spots with 100 spaces or more. Any expansion which require adding of more 100 spaces or more. Anything below that again would be local programmatic, so doesn't need to be in the LRTP. So it's considered local programmatic, and it would be eligible for funds. And then any large-scale initiatives that aim to reduce single occupancy vehicles and promote the use of alternative modes on a regional level. So this is a pretty open-ended statement, but we want to make sure that we capture any large-scale initiative, a TDM initiative. So again, big picture, looking at maybe locality-wise or system-wide reduction rather than looking at a spot or just the corridors. So again, $10 million or more, that should be anything less than that, again, would be qualified for CMAQ funds, but again, it's local programmatic project. Active transportation project, regional trail networks, multi-use trails that connect significant destinations in the Richmond region, any major extension or enhancement to existing trail, like the spur routes to Fall Line Trail or the Capitol Trail, those kind of things. And then large-scale bicycle infrastructure, protected bike lanes that serve regional travel needs, bridges or underpasses where there's a lot of foot traffic or bike traffic on our LRTP road network. So we might have such things, but and that I know that the underpasses and overpasses cost a lot. So I think those should be, if we have planned any, those should be in the LRTP. And then we have the freight and the passenger rail projects, any capacity enhancement to rail corridors, any grade separations on rail corridors to improve safety and traffic flow, any new rail access line to industries, which include the Port of Virginia, airports, rail yards, and any other warehousing, big warehousing, new or relocated passenger rail stations, improvement construction of roadways that function as intermodal connectors, like the airport connector, which is not any other category, but it connects our airport through 895. That's an example of intermodal connector. Anything which connects to the Commerce Road, which connects to our port. So those kind of things, any improvement on that, not just capacity improvement, but any other improvement. And again, there's a dollar value, which is $10 million or more. And then finally, any capital improvement projects related to Port of Virginia, again, a dollar value of $10 million or more. So yeah, that's what we have heard last time. The red ones were based on your comments, which we heard last time, and we addressed all of those. So that's all. Again, if there's, we need an agreement on this. This thing doesn't need to go to the policy board. It's pretty technical. So, but we need an agreement from this group saying that, okay, these projects are fine, and we proceed with that. So if we have any discussion, any question, concerns, any further recommendation, I think this is the right time to do that. Yes, Trip.
I think it's a good list. It captures a whole lot of things. One question is, as I think it said on rail stations, it's only if it's new or relocated. What about a substantial overhaul and improvement of an existing? And you could have a dollar figure like you do on most other things.
Yeah, I think, yeah, probably need to add that as well, because I know that Staples Mill is doing pretty good. I think that was the plan last time when we did it.
Yep.
So, and it's a significant costly project, around figures in billions. So yeah, definitely can add that as well. Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions, concerns, recommendations? Hi, JJ. Go ahead.
Hey, Sula, can you go back to number 5, the active transportation projects?
Mm-hmm.
For the large scale bicycle infrastructure, do we want to say something more general instead of saying protected bike lanes? I was thinking like a shared use path that's off-road isn't protected, but it is a large scale bike or a potential large scale bicycle infrastructure improvement.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. So instead of saying protected bike lanes, we say large scale bike infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, great. We'll do that. Any other recommendation other than the two things which I'm going to add about the enhancement to the existing railway stations, as well as changing the wordings for the active transportation to large infrastructure? Anything else? Holly, do you have a question?
So can you go back to the slide you were just on?
This one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reading. I was making sure I was catching everything that JJ was saying. Okay, can you go back one more? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitch, do you have a question? Okay, any other questions, concerns?
Love, there's some chatter in the chat. Mitch
Oh.
can't unmute, and so we're debating the term shared use for bike lanes.
Could anyone hear me?
Oh yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think under the TDM ones, I'm wondering if it's possible to add either consideration with access to commuter bus services for the park and rides, as opposed to just parking lots. You can also combine those services with commuter bus services. And then under the transit projects, I forget if that's what number that is.
3.
3. Adding for fixed route projects, increased frequency for local routes instead of just BRT focused, since we've seen, or there have been like recent studies that have shown that frequency is a more of a driver of ridership than just coverage. So I think that would be good to point out.
So for transit, we are only considering capital improvement rather than the operational improvement. Increase in the frequency would be on operational change rather than a capital change, right? If it requires any capital investment, then it would be qualified. So that's the catch. So
Okay.
but we can add that language to the TDM one which you suggested. So add a language about commuter bus, right?
Yeah, combining commuter bus services with park and ride
Okay, great.
projects.
Great suggestions. Okay, anything else? Last call. Okay, great. Seems like we are all on the agreement. I'll change those things as suggested, and we'll have a final copy of what are all projects which are based on the project inclusion guidelines. Great. So the next step, so we have the project inclusion guidelines finalized. We know what type of projects would be in the universe of projects. So so translation needs, as Dorian talked about, established in 4.2 on the LRTP network. Again, we'll give a little bit talk on the LRTP network and might tweak it, or it might remain the same, but that's still going to be called as the LRTP network. We have to convert those needs into logical translation projects with estimated cost. So these needs, we have a lot of studies going in the region. VDOT has done many studies, localities have done many studies. So there might already be a solution for those those needs and issues. So in that case, it's easy. We just need to fill in those. But in some cases, we might see a need which doesn't have been studied yet, or we don't have a solution yet. So we need to come up with those solutions. And to do that, we have decided that we will have project champions, which we'll work with for individual projects. And then what would be the purview of the individual champions is listed as below. So the localities would be the project champions within the localities itself. So all the 9 localities, any projects within those localities would be, the localities would be the champion, and we'll work with the localities. If it's a multi-jurisdictional active transportation project, if it's a bridge project, and if it's a highway project which crosses jurisdictional boundary other than the interstate, then Lrtp us as staff would be the project champions. Again, we'll talk with the localities where those projects would cross boundaries, and then again VDOT as well. We'll talk with them, but for the sake of dividing the work, Lrtp would be the champions. Any transit-related projects, capital improvement projects, GRTC would be the project champions. Any interstate-related projects, VDOT would be the project champions. Any passenger rail or freight rail-related projects, we'll be working with the DRPT as well as Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. They are not in the committee, but I believe that if we're talking about some passenger rail, I think they should be in the picture as well. And I believe we can do that through DRPT. Any Richmond Marine Terminal related project, capital improvement project, Port of Virginia would be the champion for that. And then any TDM related projects, we have right finders as well as localities. If we have a park and ride lot in that locality, obviously that locality would also be a champion. So primarily right finders, but again, the localities as well would be the champions. So once we send you the spreadsheet, we'll have individual meetings with localities as well as other agencies. We'll finalize the needs, and then we'll start thinking about developing projects. Some of them already have been developed. Some of them we have to come up with. So it's going to take a few months to develop that. And we'll be working very closely with the champions to develop those project lists. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Any questions regarding the process which is coming, or the champions, project champions? Okay, seeing none, will be the next step is basically we'll be coordinating individual meetings with the localities and agencies before the next meeting to talk about the needs and the process of developing the projects. You will get email from us for the, I think we'll start from maybe the week of, let me see, the week of a second or third week of June. I think that time we'll be probably start. We'll give you some time to digest the spreadsheet, which we'll be sending out sometime this week, Dorian, right? Yeah, we'll be sending out the spreadsheet,
Correct.
issue inventory and guidelines today. So we'll give you some time to digest that, and then we'll have coordinate an individual meeting with the localities and agency to go through over it and the process after that. And I think that's all. The next meeting is I think June 25th. That's our next meeting, in which we'll see, I think hopefully we'll all be able to review the needs and we'll be able to finalize that so that we can start working on the projects. I think that's the major discussion on that meeting. Again, the LRTP network, I'll also send that so that we can finalize that in the next meeting. Mitch, do you have a question?
I was just gonna make a suggestion for the champions. You can also add intercity bus to DRPT as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we can help facilitate those discussions too.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah. So the needs inventory, we are going to look at that if anything missed, combining the public input as well. And then moving forward to develop projects as well as the finalizing the LRTP network. I'll send the LRTP network GIS file to everybody so that you can have a look. And then you can provide me comments. You don't need to wait until next meeting. Just provide me any concerns or comments so that we can address that and resolve the issues. Okay, that's it for the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Unless we have any other questions, we are done for the day. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.